Well, good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. I have to cover all time zones there. So here we are with Simon Turpin from the United Kingdom, from England, and we're going to be talking about the Contending for Society webinar that's coming up. And we have a new way of doing it this time, which I think is going to be really great, and I'll explain that in a moment. But people will actually go to the answers.tv streaming service we have, and they can actually pay for just this particular conference, which will be very, very inexpensive, £5 for the United Kingdom, $6.99 for the US, and it'll be converted into whatever currency that you have. And you actually buy the conference on answers.tv, and then once you have it, you can always go to it and watch it, actually. And you can do it by setting up an account, putting your credit card number in, and then you've got an account on answers.tv, so then you can actually use the free trial if you want to. You can also subscribe to answers.tv for all the other thousands of pieces of the items that we have on there, video and documentaries and science experiments. And we just put up a whole lot of Billy Graham movies and documentaries and his classic sermons, and that's all on there as well. And kids programs, kids music, etc. So anyway, we're going to give people instructions on how they can do that. But hey, Simon, at a time when I just noticed in Australia, in the state of Victoria, they just passed legislation against conversion therapy for those that are, LGBT, Q, etc. But in that particular legislation, they also made it prosecutable for somebody who prays with them, or if you say homosexuality is a sin. So in other words, they have opened up a door that you could outlaw Christians preaching from the Bible what it says about homosexuality, or actually praying with someone. And so we can see here the attack on the church, the attack on Christianity. So this particular conference is very pertinent for this day and age. It's called Contending for Society webinar, and the very first talk at 12 Greenwich time, which is 7 a.m. USA Eastern Standard Time, and that's this coming Saturday. So it will be this coming Saturday, and the date, Simon, this coming Saturday is?
It's February the 13th.
February the 13th.
The webinar will take place on Saturday, February the 13th.
Okay, so February the 13th, this coming Saturday. I'll just run through the topics. Genesis and the Sexual Revolution by Simon Turpin. The Benefits of Christian Education, Professor Stuart Burgess. Reconnecting the Gospel to a Godless Culture, Professor Andy McIntosh. And we have an increasingly godless culture in the West. Quick Answers to Racism and Abortion, Brian Osborne. Are People Born Gay, Dr. Georgia Purdom. That'll be a really interesting one. And Climate Change, Should We Be Concerned? Dr. Alan White, he's an expert on those issues. And Will They Stand, which is based upon my new book, and I'm giving that particular talk. And it's really about how to raise up generations of kids to stand on God's word boldly, courageously, not compromise. How to raise up godly offspring. What does the Bible say? And so we're going to look at that from a perspective of God's word. So Simon, why don't you run through and give us a little bit of information here about each of these presentations from your perspective. Give us a little summary. And this is a webinar. Your webinars have been very, very successful that you conduct. This time, it will actually be through answers.tv. So if people watch very carefully here in a moment, we'll show you how you do that and go and watch it through our streaming service. So Simon, give us a little bit of a summary of each of these talks.
Yeah, Ken, we've been doing these webinars now for the last several months, and we've had our last webinar, we had 17 different countries represented. And obviously at this webinar, we're going to be touching on the issue of social issues, all these different issues that we see going on in our society. So I'll be opening up the conference with a talk on Genesis and the sexual revolution. Obviously, you just said there's all sorts of issues going on in society regarding sexuality. So we'll be looking at the origins of how this all came about, the worldview that brought it about, and how, as Christians, we can stand for truth and deal with this issue of sexuality in our modern society. And then Professor Stuart Burgess, who is a professor at a university, a leading university here in the United Kingdom, is going to give his take on why, as Christians, we should stand for Christian education. And he's going to point out the difference between a secular worldview and a biblical worldview, and why we should really raise our children with a biblical Christian education. And then Professor Andy McIntosh, another professor from a leading university here in the United Kingdom. Andy's got many years of debating atheists, of witnessing for Christ publicly in open air evangelism. And he's going to be talking to us about how we can present the truth of the gospel in our modern society. So he'll be particularly looking at Paul in Acts 17 and how he presents the gospel to the Greeks in Athens, because Ken, our culture today, as you've long pointed out, is very much like an Acts 17 culture. And then we have our first speaker from the US joining us for our last session in the afternoon, Brian Osborne. Brian is a great speaker, and he's brought out 2 books called Quick Answers to Social Issues, and he's going to be looking at the social issues aspect in this talk on racism and abortion, 2 very prevalent issues in our time. But how can we give answers to racism, and how can we give answers to abortion? And then the last 3 talks of the day will be Dr. Georgia Purdom looking at the question, are people born gay? I was speaking, Ken, at a webinar in Holland in the weekend, and it was to a youth outreach, and there were lots of young people there who weren't Christians, and all the questions they had were about these issues of sexuality, gender, homosexuality, and what the Bible has to say. So this is a very important talk for people to listen to, and Georgia will give some great questions. And then another leading issue of our time is climate change, and Dr. Alan White will be showing us what the Bible and science say about the issue of climate change. And then lastly, you will be closing the webinar conference off with your talk on Will They Stand? Again, encouraging parents to take a stand in how they train and educate their children from a biblical perspective.
Yeah, Simon, this is sorely needed in this day and age. I mean, we have had, as we know, we've had the sexual revolution, and then we've had the homosexual revolution, and now the gender revolution, and it's driving the whole culture of the West. And you can see how this is going to be used against Christianity in a big way. I mean, when you look at the legislation that was passed in Australia, in Victoria, I mean, basically saying you can't pray with someone if they're homosexual. If they do, and they go and complain that you prayed with them, you could be put in jail for like 10 years. I mean, it's absolutely stunning. And then if you preach that homosexuality is a sin, and then somebody complains about that because they're in the audience, I mean, that particular legislation is probably the worst in the world, probably following Canada, in regard to impinging on religious freedom. And I mean, if they're going to do that, how long before they say the Bible is outlawed? I've been saying for years now, the whole West, when you have a different generation come in who are secularized, and they also begin to control the politics of a nation, you could see how they could move against Christianity and churches. And there are some countries that make it illegal to what they call proselytize. If you share the gospel and someone's converted, you can be prosecuted for that. I can see how that could easily happen in our Western culture. But not only that, they could come and say, well, the Bible is a hate-filled book, because the Bible calls adultery sin, fornication sin, homosexual behavior sin. I mean, they're all sin according to the Bible. And so we are living in interesting times, and we certainly need a conference like this. So let me tell people how we're going to do this one. Okay, in previous conferences, you have had people register, and then you've sent them a link. Okay, this time we're not going to do that. This time, here's what they can do. And they can do this at any time, right? There's no pre-registration, but they can go there and do this and get ready, or do it on the day or the day before, or do it right now. And once you paid for it, it's ready there to watch as soon as it happens. And so I'm going to have one of our techs here at Answers in Genesis. By the way, you like my view out the back window here? I changed my office around, and we're now looking out at the Creation Museum gardens and the lake, but you can tell it's winter because there's no leaves on the trees and it's very brown. Tonight they're expecting 3 to 5 inches of snow, so it'll be very, very different tomorrow. It'll be all white out there. So anyway, so let's show people how to do this. So they go to answers.tv. Okay, you see that? Answers.tv. I'll just explain that. This is our streaming service. We have about 3,000 programs on there now for all ages, teaching programs, conferences, music, science experiments, homeschool lessons, Bible lessons. We have a section too up the top, as well as all that we have on there. Yeah, we can run down and show you some of that. And some of the things we do behind the scenes. We have creationist documentary programs, creationist nature programs like Hike and Seek and Out and About, and we have one for little kids as well called Shoes Off. That's for the little kids. And then we have science experiments, and then we have all sorts of programs on there. And we just put on a whole series of programs from the Billy Graham Association, movies like The Hiding Place and Joni Erickson, and also they have other movies and documentaries and the classic sermon series by Billy Graham. So they just went on there as well. We have material from Ray Comfort from Living Waters. We have a lot of his programs on there. So this is really a unique streaming service in the whole world, and in the Christian world in particular. And so it's sort of just like Netflix, except it's Christian. And we don't have as many programs yet, but we got about 3,000 different programs. Now, when you go up the top, you'll see a series of menus across the top there, and one of them says buy or rent. So we have on the streaming service some movies and other items that people can actually buy or rent. So we'll click on the buy or rent to show you what happens here. And we're hoping to click on the buy or rent here. And we'll have to show you what happens here in a moment. But you click on the buy or rent, and then it'll actually come up with the programs that you can buy or rent. And you'll see the Contending for Society webinar there. So just a couple of questions here while we're getting this ready. Is Answers TV available on Roku? Yes, it's available on all the apps, all the different apps. You name the app, it's available on it. So right now, it looks like here we are, buy or rent. If we can click on that. Oh, I can't get it to work. So we're going to go out of this, and isn't that fun trying to do something like this on StreamYard? It seems to be stuck on 180. The movie there by Ray Comfort. But anyway, you go up to that top menu, buy or rent, and you click on that, and then it'll come up with the conference Contending for Society, where it actually comes up with our women's conference as well, and it comes up with some other movies and documentaries that you can pay for. And then you actually click on the Contending for Society webinar, and then it'll come up with, you want to set up an account and pay, and then you pay, and then you can watch it anytime that you want. So, Simon, again, tell us a summary of what you're going to be talking on.
Yeah, my talk, Ken, is on Genesis and the sexual revolution. And again, we've mentioned the fact that there's a sexual revolution, there's a gender revolution going on in society today. But actually, those things, Ken, as you've pointed out for many years, are founded upon another revolution, the Darwinian revolution. If you didn't have the Darwinian revolution, you wouldn't have the sexual revolution, and you wouldn't have the gender revolution. They're all tied together. So we're going to look how those things fit together, what's going on in our Western world today, but how we can answer those questions from a biblical point of view. Because if you read Romans chapter 1, Paul tells us that God, the evidence for God is there in creation, and people have that evidence. It doesn't matter where they are in the world, but the problem is they suppress it in unrighteousness. And if you read on in the chapter, he goes on to say that when people suppress that, one of the consequences of that is homosexuality. And so that's one of the main examples he gives. And so we shouldn't be surprised that in cultures where people have suppressed the truth of God as their creator, that you'll see these different issues such as homosexuality coming out, a gender revolution coming out. That's the consequences of getting rid of God in society.
Hey, Simon, there's a question here which I don't quite understand from Louise. I've already paid for the webinar but don't have Answers TV. Will I be able to log into Answers TV to watch it? Anyone can go to answers.tv and answers.tv, and if you go to buy or rent up the top, that's what we're having trouble. Others are saying the directions are just fine. They're getting it. Yeah, it was just us trying to share it live where we had a problem for some reason. But when you go up the top and you see that menu that says buy or rent, you click on that, and once you paid for it, you can go back to that anytime you want. You don't have to be a subscriber to answers.tv to go to it. Anyone can go to answers.tv and go to the buy or rent. You can buy or rent any of the programs or conferences that are on that section. Now, the rest of Answers TV comes with your subscription. Once you set up an account, you can set up a free trial at any stage if you want, or, it's only just over $3 US a month anyway to subscribe for the whole year. It is a phenomenal streaming service, and we're improving it more and more every day. So answers.tv, that's what you go to. Go to buy. Yeah.
I think Louise may have bought the conference before it actually went live on Answers TV. So what would have happened is that Louise should have received an email, just a number of people like this, and she would have had a coded coupon, and she doesn't have to buy the conference again. All she has to do is put the code she was sent in to the relevant section there when she opens up Answers TV, and she'll have access to the conference. So she doesn't have to pay again. She should have received a coded coupon from Answers in Genesis UK, but I'll check that this afternoon.
Okay. So those that have already prepaid, you should have got a code. Mm-hmm. And yeah, when you click on buy or rent, it'll have coupon code area for you to put your coupon code in and go there. Now, answers.tv, you can watch on your computer, or you can use any of the apps. So you can use Roku. Actually, my wife and I have Roku at home, and that's what we use. But you could do Roku and Fire Stick and, anything that you name, Apple TV, any of those. That'll work fine. And we're going to do all of our conferences live through Answers TV. When we do a conference and people pay to come for a conference, then we'll put it under the buy or rent section. And then maybe a few months later, it'll just get into the Answers TV normal lineup as well. But you'll see there, for instance, our women's conference coming up. You can actually go to the women's conference. It's going to be a phenomenal conference too, from here in the US. So, Simon, the conferences you've been doing there, while you're still on lockdown there in the United Kingdom?
Yeah, we've been in lockdown for about a year, I think, almost now, and we don't get out until the end of March. Hopefully, the end of March. Hopefully, by that time, the government will have come to their senses and realised, we need to be getting back on with life. But yeah, we're still locked up in our homes. I'm in my bedroom right now, and we will be until March, unfortunately.
We need to pray for what's going on, obviously, in these countries, because I know even in the States, even in states that, are not on lockdown like they used to be, but a lot of businesses have gone out of business. I mean, they've gone bankrupt, and a lot of restaurants, they're predicting 30% or more of restaurants are going to close down. I can't imagine what's going to happen in the United Kingdom to the economy. It's going to be devastating. And I'm sure you're seeing that, are you?
Yeah, you're already sadly seeing. I can go just down the street from where I live, and you can see a number of businesses that sadly have already had to close because they haven't been open for at least 9 or 10 months. And when you do that, you're gonna go bankrupt. And sadly, yeah, we'll see the economic fruit of this. But you know what, Ken? As a ministry, God has been providing for us over the last year, and we're amazed to see what He's doing and what He continues to do through the work of Answers in Genesis, not only in this country but around the world.
Yeah, and there's a small number of Christians in the United Kingdom, and you reach out to the United Kingdom and Europe, and so God's people support the ministry there in the United Kingdom and supporting you. And without that, you wouldn't be able to exist. So we praise the Lord for that. And you have all the materials, the resources that we provide here in the USA. You can order them through the UK and have them shipped to you, all the various books and so on. And so this particular webinar coming up this Saturday, Friday the 13th. So it starts at 12 o'clock. Well, that's Greenwich time, right? Which is 7 a.m. USA time, Eastern Standard Time. And then it goes all day, has a break. And you start with Genesis and the sexual revolution, and I finish with Will They Stand? And actually, I think that's a good way to start it. You actually lay out all the problems that are going on, then we deal with individual issues, the abortion issue, and are you born gay, that Dr. Georgia Purd as a geneticist will be dealing with, and dealing with other sorts of issues. And I end it with, okay, what does the Bible say about raising up godly children? It's really the case for Christian education. That's really what it is. And what does the Bible say about education and the priorities and so on? And so that's going to be rounding that off. And answers.tv is where you'll be watching it on our streaming service. You can go there and you can buy the conference. Once you've bought it, you can always go there and watch it. Even if you haven't subscribed to answers.tv, you can always go there and watch it, because once you've bought it, it'll be there for you. So this is what's great about answers.tv, but it is a phenomenal streaming service. And you've got other lectures up on Answers TV anyway, Simon.
Yeah, we did our last 3 conferences now. They're all up on Answers TV. Our Bible conference, our conference that we did on creation, our conference that we did on world religions. You can go back in the archives there at Answers TV and look at those conferences and be extremely blessed. Yeah, so we're doing all this, and they'll go straight onto Answers TV, and it's great to have all this content available to us. And I'll tell you, Ken, another benefit for people who, if they sign up to the conference, you mentioned already that we do the resources here. Well, if you sign up, you become an attendee at the conference for a week, you have an opportunity to have 15% of any resources you want to buy from Answers and Genesis. That doesn't matter whether it's from our UK Europe store, from a Canadian store, or from in the US. You'll get 15% off all resources if you attend the conference.
Well, Yvonne has asked a question here. This will be my 4th UK webinar. Maybe we should have a frequent webinar price or something. But anyway, it's very inexpensive anyway, as it is £5 for the whole webinar, $6.99 US. Will you continue past March? So you're going to continue doing some of these webinars, and I'm sure you will, actually.
Yeah, we've already got one planned for March, Ken. If they go to the UK website, it's already up there. And then we've got one already planned for April. And it looks like we'll have to continue doing these things, because it's not looking likely that we'll be back speaking in churches in the near future. Yeah, so we'll be doing these things for the foreseeable future. So,
I think that really what these lockdowns have done is to get people used to going online and, using their computers. And we realize we can reach people you can't just reach by traveling. I mean, you can travel and go to one church and reach people, but by doing webinars like this, you reach people all around the world and different countries all at the same time. So I'm sure, what this has done is say, hey, we need to be doing this continually. And so we'll continue to do this as we're doing here in the States as well. Yvonne, by the way, said she really appreciates UK speakers and Neil's help. He sent out the email. That's one of your staff there. And then John said, it's not that the questions are hard, it's that much of society doesn't like the answers. Well, that's true. And of course, when you start from God's word, the answers are all there, but it really is a spiritual issue, isn't it? It's a worldview clash because 2 different foundations, God's word or man's word.
Ken, I'll just say, actually, the answers to these questions maybe are easy to us and they're hard for people to accept. But, when we go into society and engage with society, they're oblivious sometimes of the Christian worldview. Like I said a bit earlier, at the weekend, I was speaking at a youth conference in Holland via Zoom. I had the opportunity to do that. That actually came out of one of our previous webinars. And a number of the young people there were totally secular in their worldview, and they had no idea what the Bible taught. And just to be able to give biblical answers to them, to respond for their questions was really helpful for them, because it helped them understand what the Bible actually teaches and what it doesn't teach, what's often misrepresented as. So it's good that we have these answers to give to people.
Right. That's for sure. And we better wind up here in a moment, but Yvonne said, I haven't heard Ken's testimony, re how long you taught high school, how long you were with Henry Morris and other creationists. And actually, the new book, Will They Stand, which you now have in the United Kingdom. And I'm sort of giving a summary of that in the talk at this webinar. That has a lot of my personal testimony in there. And I was a high school teacher for 5 years and worked with Dr. Henry Morris, actually, at ICR in California for 7 years before we founded Answers in Genesis, and we moved here to Northern Kentucky in 1995. Hard to believe, but in the past 25, 26 years, you know, to see the Answers in Genesis ministry grow around the world, and the Creation Museum and the Ark Encounter attractions that are built here. So with that, again, coming up February 13th, I see somebody here said just subscribed. Well, that's great. Coming up, you will be very thrilled with Answers TV, and we keep adding material every day, actually. But coming up on Saturday, we have this conference you can watch live, this webinar, and it's being conducted actually by Answers in Genesis UK. And so it starts live Saturday morning at 7 a.m. Eastern Standard Time in the US. 12 o'clock, in fact, 10 minutes before that, be welcome an introduction, but 12 o'clock in the United Kingdom, 12 o'clock Greenwich time, and which is 5 hours ahead of Eastern Standard Time in the United States. But you go to answers.tv, go to the menu at the top, it says buy or rent, and you click on that, and then that'll come up with the conferences that are coming up that you can buy, or actually movies that we have on there that you can buy or rent. You look for Contending for Society, you'll be there towards the beginning. Contending for Society webinar, click on that. You go pay $6.99 in the US, £5 for the UK. It'll come up with your currency is what it'll do. And then once you bought that, it is yours. It'll be there. You can go to answers.tv anytime. You can use any of the apps, Roku, Apple TV, all the other apps. You can watch it on your TV. Just go to answers.tv and you can do it there on your computer. So there's various ways that you can watch it. And I just think it's a great way of doing this. And I encourage people, think about subscribing to answers.tv anyway, because you get 3,000 programs right now. We're adding every day. Just as we finish off here, someone said, I want to thank you for what you do. This is Jessica, and your obedience to God's calling. We live here in Kentucky and bought a lifetime boarding pass. We've been to the Ark Museum several times already. And I'm hoping the borders will open up again this year, so people from Canada, United Kingdom, other parts of the world will start coming again. We've been getting people coming from all across the United States to the Ark and Creation Museum since we reopened back in June last year, and getting tremendous numbers of people coming to these God-honoring facilities. So somebody said here, this is Joel, COVID actually squashed my family vacation plans to come to Kentucky to visit the Ark Museum. Hopefully next year we can come there in Ontario, Canada, because the borders, I think, are still closed there in Canada. But even though borders are closed around the world in many ways, the borders are open for the webinar. And so we can cross all borders, which is what's great about that. So this coming Saturday, Friday the 13th, is through answers.tv. Go to the menu at the top, buy or rent. Go there, look for the Contending for Society webinar. And I think this is going to be a real eye-opener for people dealing with the sexual revolution. I'm sure that people are going to be thrilled with, for instance, Dr. Georgia Purdom. He works here at Answers in Genesis in the United States. She's going to do a presentation on Are People Born Gay? And I'm sure people are going to be fascinated because she's got a lot of incredible research that she's done. And this is going to be a very, very important presentation. So with that, I want to thank the others for the comments that they've put there. There's a number of other comments from people. And I like this one. ARG has shaped the course of humanity by adding to the true apologetic in the information age. Well, that's what we're doing, teaching apologetics, teaching foundationally all around the world. Well, Simon, what's the weather like over there as we close off here?
Well, actually, Ken, it's snowing here in the UK, which is rare, but it is snowing. Yeah, so it's not good weather.
Well, it'll be snowing here tonight. You can look outside. It looks cold. It is cold. I know it was. I think when I woke up this morning, they said wind chill. It was down to about 2 degrees Fahrenheit, and it's going to go down to the minuses Fahrenheit wind chill this coming week. So we got this Arctic blast coming down from Canada. See, how come the cold air's allowed to cross the border, but people aren't? You know, I don't get that. So anyway, all right. Well, I'll look forward. I'll be the participant, the final session of the webinar this coming Saturday. Look forward to being there. Answers.tv. Go to the menu at the top, buy or rent. You'll go and see it there. And when you buy or rent that particular conference, think about subscribing to Answers.tv anyway. It's only just over $3 US a month, and you'll see all the thousands of items you get as part of that subscription. Under the buy or rent section, they're the ones you actually buy or rent, and then once you've bought them, they're in your library. Just sort of like what happens on Amazon or Netflix, you know, where you subscribe and you get all these programs, but then there's ones you can buy or rent as well, and then they become part of your library. It's the same sort of thing. And this conference will be that way as well. So with that, Simon, great to talk to you, and we'll look forward to seeing you on Saturday.